My name is Kelsey and this is episode 2 of Gen Z in London versus the world. Gen Z are more likely, apparently, to advocate for other communities, like groups that aren't like them. Why do you think that is?
Personally, I think because we have this mentality that we have a duty of care, especially when we feel like we have the strength to offer that care. So in the sense that, I guess if, a certain community I felt didn't have the same strength I had in that scenario, I feel like I have that duty of care or that sort of responsibility to say something, and I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like I have that duty of or responsibility that I need to do something instead of just sit and watch. Because we're all, as Gen Z, used to people just sitting and watching us and not doing anything about it. So I think in the grand scheme of things, we have that support programming in our mindsets, in our generation, because it's like, I think as much as it might not show of like straight away or at the forefront, I think we deep down we do have that sense of pick each other up kind of mentality, and what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong kind of thing.
I feel like we have like a great exposure to things because right now like social media and just we have a lot of platforms and a lot of people giving us shouting about different problems all the time. So it's just like we know about a lot of problems that are in the world, and then the ones we gravitate to the most, or just like things that we've had exposure to, or maybe just like we're able to campaign for those things because now we actually know that they exist. And I feel like that exposure is really important.
What about you, Tussin? When was the last time, or is there a time where you've like advocated for like groups that aren't like you?
I went to the Palestinian protests, for the Free Palestine protests, and even people like not Muslim, not Palestinian, there were loads of like different people there. Most people were young, and I think it's because we have more like exposure to current events, and then we resonate more with other people and we feel more for them and have more like sympathy for them because we know what it's like to go through these things. So more people would want to like fight for change.
So do you think that millennials didn't know what it's like to feel these things?
I think they did, but I think now with more like social media being a bigger thing, it's easier to find out and research about these things.
I think a big thing is accessibility. We've had more access to information about social issues, so we're more likely, not to say that it wasn't the case with millennials, but the fact that social media has grown so fast and continues to grow so fast, it's easier to send information from one part of the world, or I guess quicker to send information from one part of the world to us.
I think on that note as well, I think because of all that you've mentioned, we're better connected as well, because back in the days, like I'd hear things like, oh, once you leave high school, you're only gonna know one person from your high school group and so and so. But I think in terms of how much social media and time in general has evolved, is that one, we don't knock on our friends' houses no more. We don't send letters to each other no more. We don't, whatever the methods, the means of communication were back then, because now we have all this social media platforms and again accessibility where we can be better connected. We can make focus groups ourselves online. We can make like group chats and these things, like all these things that are, as you said, accessibility and social media that I guess kind of forces us to be more connected.
Yeah.
Rather than, like I said, or like let's go find out what so and so is doing, and walk two roads down the road and knock on him, and then is so and so in? Can he come out?
Some things just like some problems might get like uplifted by all like social media, but at the same time there's still problems that might not be publicized because they don't sell well. Like how like things that are more negative or just things that have more of an emotional reaction, they might get more following than just something that's more like that's on a smaller scale in a small area. So it's just like it's about thinking about what are we actually doing in our areas to actually, because it's good to fight for things on like a larger scale like Black Lives Matter, but it's like what we're doing in our actual communities.
A lot of our conversation, or we're talking a lot about the time we spend on social media. So do we spend the time in ends?
The issue could be like in the front pages for like a week and all of a sudden it's quiet, nobody's posting about it anymore. Like how Breonna Taylor was like on everyone's post, on like people were making artwork about her and stuff, but we still haven't heard anything about, you know, the court case, about what they're doing about holding her murderer to account.
Like, are you like actually connected to people who are in your areas? Have you been talking to them and got those social medias so you actually know what's going on in the area, or do you just follow like big hitters, like people with loads of followers, and you're on a global scale, but you're not on like a local level, you're not on a small scale?
So when it comes to spending their time online, Gen Z and millennials like to do things differently. Gen Z like to spend most of their time communicating with and staying connected all the time, whereas millennials mostly spend their time watching or listening to things online.
We're a creative bunch that need more guidance, but we're also very outspoken and love to express ourselves, but yeah, we just need more guidance.
Internationally, environmentalism is at the forefront of Gen Z's minds. However, in London, they have a different outlook. 40% of them rank having safe and stable housing as the #1 priority for change, whereas environmentalism ranks somewhere near the bottom of the list.
I've been encouraging myself to take up more space as I've seen other people like myself take up space and have a positive consequence, a positive outcome for it. The type of spaces I take up in London, I would definitely say creative spaces. I'd say a lot of like fashion, art. It's mainly in the creative scene, so yeah, I go to art exhibitions, like showcasing. I go to little panel talks. I often attend like fashion, like, I don't know, brands like opening nights and things like that. I don't think Gen Z are necessarily encouraged to take up these spaces. I think it's more of we've reached a point in which we are actively seeking to take out these spaces. And so when one Gen Z person puts their foot forward and says, you know, I want to actively take up this space, I want to, I don't know, have a fashion pop-up, it encourages the rest of us in the community to come along, because we're seeing someone who is like ourselves take space that has been predominantly we've seen someone take up space in a world or in an environment that has been best suited for, let's say, the millennial generation, but most likely the boomers, the baby boomer generation, and yeah, that have kind of like given into all these capitalist structures, and we're actually reforming it and saying, you know what, we deserve space.
You mentioned that you do a lot of social justice work, and a lot of your activities and spaces you go to revolve around that. Do you do that in the local area that you live in?
No, I don't do a lot of social justice work in the local area that I live in, unfortunately.
Why?
Because I recently just moved to this area. I lived in Bristol before, and obviously it's vastly different. I felt as though I didn't know where to start with building those type of connections. Obviously I know that there's a local council, but bureaucracy doesn't really go very well with grassroots organizations. So it's been kind of hard to find these communities that I would be able to support. I also felt as though I didn't know enough about the area. Maybe if you want to talk about demographics or even just people and like, I don't know, community values, I didn't feel like as an outsider, I should be starting collective actions like that.
Would you say that the arts community in London, whether or not it's for Gen Z or the general population, do you think it exists in all areas or one area, and how does that impact how you, does that impact whether or not you stay in the area you live in for pleasure? Am I making sense?
So yeah, that does make a lot of sense. I think that these little communities, like arts communities and art scenes, exist in all areas, in all boroughs, all areas, all neighborhoods. However, it's just the fact that they're not seen as important enough if they're not in the center, which is really unfortunate. So it means that you do have to travel to these different places, and I think it obviously limits who can attend these art exhibitions, art galleries, art shows, whatnot.
Do you do these in your local area?
So no, I don't really attend art spaces or exhibitions in my local area, unfortunately. It just doesn't benefit me as much as it would, as much as the ones that are, I guess, more central do. I think it's because the ones that are based in the center are usually better for networking, better for connections. And yeah, we sort of live in this like fast-paced life, especially in London. There's so many different things happening every day. I can't really afford to spend a lot of time in spaces that don't immediately benefit me. So they're usually hosted in Zone 1, and yeah, they don't really reach out to all these other neighborhoods.
What about your opinion on Gen Z folk in general? Are all Gen Z folk, are they staying in their ends? Is it realistic to say that they're in ends?
I think that there's a want and a need to stay in your area, just because I know Gen Z think about money a lot, and it would be nice to not have to travel or pay for travel to all these other areas when you could have the same reach or the same activities in your local area. So I think that there's a need, a want even, to stay in your local area. However, I don't think that's necessarily reflected. I think a lot of people do travel outside of the communities, outside of their boroughs, outside the neighborhoods.
Does Generation Z need more community spaces at a hyperlocal level?
Yes and no. I think it would be great, obviously, in terms of accessibility, to have something at a local level in which you could just, turn up to, or you feel supported by, that's close by as well, is incredibly important. However, in terms of things like safety, I don't think that, for different groups, safety for different groups, or in order to reach certain spaces, I don't think that community activities are necessarily the best thing. So for example, your community group may be run or may be predominantly of a certain ethnic group, and therefore you're not reaching different other ethnic groups or different minorities by just engaging with that one community, and it would benefit you more to travel to another community and attend some sort of gathering there, or even in terms of safety, for example, providing queer safe spaces for people like me, or people like you, if you're listening, or us, or whatnot. And yeah, your community might not be as supportive, and so it would be great to be able to access another space outside of that, that is for that specific group of people, and they can feel safe when they arrive, and they can feel safe enough to be open about who they are. I think that the future of the art scene is definitely going to be Gen Z led.